Welcome to Cupcake Coaster, where we look at roller coasters young, old, and contemporary, and today we're doing a little bit of everything. We are going to be looking at the roller coaster wars and how we might be in the midst of the second one ever. Roller coaster war began somewhat in 1989 when Magnum XL 200 opened as the first full-circuit hypercoaster at Cedar Point. This is when parks realized that they needed to get bigger and better, and some enthusiasts just don't realize how crucial this was to the industry. My father actually wrote this opening year and described how it was sheer insanity like no one had ever seen before. It had over
almost 4 hours for that. And there was excitement the entire time.
And it was probably like King Dakar, right?
It was intimidating to see that 200-foot drop. Yep, I remember that quite a bit.
Over 4-hour lines. It was just like pure insanity. Nothing had ever been done like it before. And this is when parks, they started to realize, well, we need to get bigger. So in the 90s, the tallest and fastest record for coasters was just constantly going from coaster to coaster, park to park. And not only the records, but new models were emerging, from B&M and other manufacturers like Vekoma. In 2000, we saw the introduction of Steel Dragon 2000 and Millennium Force, the first two full-circuit Giga coasters. Now, these were arguably the most important coasters in the industry. There were signs before that there were going to be, at the turn of the millennium, there were signs that these awesome coasters were going to come.
At the turn of the millennium, there were signs. A 2-minute, 45-second journey through space and beyond.
But like I said, these coasters were so important because they showed how fast a record could go from one coaster to another. Steel Dragon 2000 showed that for sure because it took it from Millennium Force, and it just showed how the boundary could be pushed. So I think these were very crucial for the coaster wars. A couple of years later, there was a minor battle between King Dakar and Top Thrill Dragster, sort of like an animosity there because King Dakar just stole the record from Top Thrill Dragster. So, and the coaster war basically ended in 2007, thereabouts. In 2008, there was a recession of coasters. Now, there were coasters being built, but they weren't as crucial or relevant to the industry because there was really no competition at this time. Now, recently, the industry has been definitely ruled by Rocky Mountain Construction, who's been making a huge emergence in the industry. And I could argue that Mach is actually making a emergence as well as Vekoma, even though you really haven't seen it in the United States. Mach, Vekoma, and Rocky Mountain Construction are making a big dent in the amusement industry. At IAAPA in 2018, Great Coasters International showed us multiple new models, including a shuttle coaster model and then a dueling hybrid, which is definitely meant to counter Rocky Mountain Construction, but that's for a separate video. There was also Intamin, who introduced 2 new major coasters for Europe. We also know that they're building 2 roller coasters for the indoor American Dream Mall in New Jersey for April of 2019. Rocky Mountain Construction gave out new information regarding their single-rail coasters, including some stats on the Raptor and T-Rex, as well as they have teased a model that is sort of in between those two models, so between the size of a Raptor and between the grand scale of a T-Rex. Now, a really interesting company to watch is Bollinger and Mabillard, B&M. Though they used to rule the industry, they're slowly backing out of America, and they're trying out their market in Asia with the Hyper and Wing coming to various Happy Valley parks. And I think B&M backed out because their type of coaster just is not simply wanted for their pricing and coaster type. For now, majority of established parks have a big but unintense coaster, so just like B&M, and now the main market is for something truly innovative and insane, just like these new generation launch coasters from Mach, RMC, or SNS, Sansai. So I think B&M is backing out because amusement parks in the United States just simply aren't in the market for it. And we're seeing these smaller B&Ms built around Europe now. Of course, we saw this with Phoenix in Toverland, and then we saw this with Baron 1898 down in the Netherlands. So yeah, B&M's definitely trying out a couple of different markets, but for now I think they're slowly backing out of the US, and that's not to say that they're not building any coasters here. In fact, we're seeing a Hyper in 2020, a dive coaster next year, and of course the conversion to Firebird. So I mean, they're not irrelevant yet, but they're definitely backing out and they're being taken over by other manufacturers. I'm waiting for Vekoma to install a really good coaster in America. No, not Dragonfly. I'm sure that's going to be a great family coaster, but I'm talking something like Lech Coaster in Poland. Pardon my butchering of that pronunciation. This will enter them into the top books for enthusiasts and parks alike because their coasters seem to be reliable, fun, and they're very popular amongst the general public and enthusiasts, and they're very affordable too. I mean, a Bermuda Blitz coaster is actually insanely affordable compared to some of the other models on the market. So yeah, I definitely think once Vekoma enters the game in the United States and maybe even more in Europe, I think that they're going to become a lot more relevant because they're slowly building up this giant empire. Intamin is really dominating Europe right now. It's installing 2 major coasters in New Jersey for the 2019 season. We don't even know what they have in store for 2020. There's a possible Busch Gardens coaster coming to Williamsburg, which appears to be something similar to Soaring with Dragons. So they're dominating Europe. So they're dominating Europe and Asia, but I'm waiting for them to come into the U.S., possibly 2020. So Coaster War 2 has very much started or is starting. The only difference between now and before the Coaster Wars used to be between parks, and now it's mainly manufacturers. And what I mean by that is before, I think the parks is what really caused the Coaster Wars. They were like, we want a coaster that's above 300 feet. Build us one. And so they did. Whereas now it's like the manufacturers are being like, here's what we have to offer. And the result is parks buying these insane coasters. So it is a bit different from the previous Coaster War, but it's very much a clashing of new models. As for what to expect for the far, far future, I think B&M will realize that the Asian market isn't as good as they thought it would be, and just watching these new models that are insane from GCI and Rocky Mountain Construction, I think that they'll come out with a couple of new models that are possibly more intense or more sophisticated, because I think we can just all agree that the B&M coasters now are just kind of getting old. Mach will have to start building some non-launch coasters because if Intamin is coming back, let's just all admit that Intamin's going to just kick Mach's butt because Intamin is so much better. Rocky Mountain Construction is finally has some hybrid competition with the GCI models, but Rocky Mountain Construction is really growing fast because we're seeing them building more in the European market with Untamed and then Wildfire a few years back, as well as Hakugai in Asia. So Rocky Mountain Construction is very much still very relevant, if not the most relevant. I'm also guessing that we'll see either Vekoma or SNS try some sort of like single rail-ish model, because I'm predicting that these Raptors and T-Rexes by RMC being very popular eventually. So someone's going to want to have to copy off their homework. So yeah, very much is happening. The Coaster War 2 is real. I am very excited to see what goes on. This is an exciting time to be an enthusiast. I'll catch you.